the rock and our Redeemer. Amen. You know, I got a message on Facebook, and it was 11 years ago, last week, that I became a certified candidate. Been a long 11 years, and there's a lot of education if you haven't heard. So when I answered the call, I was in the Church of the Nazarene for a few years for a ministry opportunity, and they required a bachelor's degree in pastoral ministries. Well, I hadn't finished my history degree, so I started looking around for a school, and there was a seminary in Kansas City that was way too expensive. Then I heard about a college, Nazarene Bible College, which was the training place for most Nazarene pastors. And so then I thought, okay, they're affordable, but there's no way I can move to Colorado Springs. Well, there was a blessing in there, kind of. They had an online program. So I could start ministry, and so I've had both in-person classes in college and in seminary and online. And so my typical in-person class was lectures 2 or 3 days a week, 3 or so hours worth of them, and a couple of papers, a research paper and a term paper, so about 25 pages worth of writing. That was what my in-person undergraduate classes were like. My online classes, first I thought it was great because I didn't have to be in class at any certain time, and so that was great. But then I looked at the syllabus and saw what I had to do. So there was an online lecture that you read whenever you wanted to. Every week you wrote a 5-page reflection on that. And we were supposed to make posts, so many posts a week, and then you had to reply to so many posts. And there was multiple papers. And I can tell you, I went from writing about 15 to 20 pages in a class per semester to probably closer to 80. So it was nice because I could do that at home, but there was so much more work involved in doing it online. My experience at St. Paul has been the same way. You know, we started out no online classes, then we had hybrids, where we met part of the time online, part of the time in person. And the one thing that is common to both of those, if you do it online, it is much more work to get the same out of it. It's much more work. And how about when we meet online, I keep losing this word. When we have meetings online, Zoom. Zoom's terrible. I mean, it's nice when you can have a meeting when you normally couldn't have it, but you know, the point is, when you do things online, it's much more difficult to get even close to the same experience. And I thought today about this gathering together. Because now, we've pretty thoroughly talked about the blood of Christ, haven't we? Past couple weeks. Yeah, how Christ is our high priest. So all this is wrapped up in here, but it's because of this, remember towards the end of the passage, and so we do something in response to knowing all of that. So I'm not going to rehash that. But talk about the response, because we know we have a high priest, we know we have somebody who's for us. You know we don't have to do all of that, so we have things to do. And the scripture really points out gathering together. Remember what it talks about, gathering together to encourage one another and to incite one another to find works of love. And that, you know, there were some who had the habit of not gathering. Now this was in the 2nd century, end of the 1st century. And so you were talking about Christians who had been 2nd generation, maybe even 3rd generation, that have had time to learn about Christ and learn about the church and all that. So this was an issue that had started developing then. You know, they were busy. Everybody been there. Of course, they were busy in John Wesley's day. They were busy 100 years ago. You know, we're busy. That's what we are. And so, Paul made it a point to talk about how important gathering together is. Now, what I want to make sure is, as we start this talking about gathering together, you know, that it's all important. Being here is important. And being online, worshiping online is important. I think this morning how many people aren't here because they are working. You know, some work in the hospitals. Some are, you know, emergency personnel. You know, some people, they have to work. We need them to be working and they can't be here. Or people are sick. There's lots of reasons why we may not be here today. So being able to be online is an important aspect of worship. But, as in everything, we can do worship better here in person. We can do worship better at home. When we think about what it means to worship, what it means to gather together to encourage and incite to find words. Isn't that an odd word, incite? Why do we need to be incited? Well, we do. Because we like to be comfortable, and sometimes doing good works or showing love to others is not comfortable. Sometimes it's not. And so this is what worship is. And so what I was going to do is I was going to kind of compare some of the things that are involved in worship and how they happen here, how they happen at home, and how they can happen. So when you think about church, coming here to worship, what's the first thing you got to do? You got to get up. Yeah, you got to figure out what's going to wear, empty out your closet. You know that. You know the. I can say half the time I'm in there looking, okay, what shirt am I going to wear? I've only got like 5 or 6 of them. But we think about it, we plan, right? We know. Now, the way I was growing up, I knew do not plan anything on Sunday morning. And so that's me. But we think about church, we know we're going to go to church. And so we think about it, and you know, we're getting ready. If you look in our newsletter, you see the lectionary scriptures. And so you can be pretty much sure that when you look at the newsletter, on this day I'm going to be preaching on one of those scriptures. So you can even look at that and read. That's one way we can make it better. Wonder what it's going to be. Wonder what it's going to say. You know, you can do that. You can plan and you can prepare for church. And then you got to get in your car and come to church, right? It's a long haul here for some of us. For some of us it is. I say that, then I look at it. It is. I can remember driving 45 minutes regularly to church. But we come to church. You know, it's a purposeful thing. We're going someplace that we plan. But what happens online? And, you know, I can't say a lot for anybody else but me, but I go online to watch worship when I can. I don't really plan it. I don't say, okay, Wednesday night, well, I can't go on Wednesday night. Tuesday night at 4 o'clock or evening, I'm going to go online and watch worship. You know, when I watch another worship service, I watch it when I feel like it, when nothing else is happening. So maybe it's the best. You know, we may set an alarm, or I have to set a date, an appointment, so it tells me not only what the alarm is, but what it's for. But that's kind of the planning a lot of times. We don't really think about it. But maybe we need to think about it if we're going to be online. Because there's one thing about coming to church. You've made the decision and the commitment and the sacrifice to come to church. So maybe when you meet online, you ought to think about doing that, saying, okay, this is when I'm going to do it. Not if it's convenient, but this is what. Make it purposeful. That it's not just something that may or may not happen. Because I can tell you with me, if it may or may not happen, it's not going to happen. So we're at church now. And I can tell you one of the things I liked when I was a layperson, and is I liked pulling up and seeing who was there, seeing how many cars was there before me. Now that's tough because I grew up in a tradition where if you weren't half an hour early, you were late. But there's still some people there before me. And so I enjoyed that. But I go into church, and what's the first thing you do when you walk in church? You start talking, right? You greet people. You see them. That's an important part of worship. You know, you're connecting with others. Sometimes the people you don't see once a week on Sunday. Sometimes you don't see them very rarely. But it's an opportunity to see each other and catch up with each other. And now in a lot of churches, ours too, most of that happens after church. You know, we gather together if we have Sunday school. If not, we get here just before church starts. But the nice thing is we hang around afterwards, so I kind of include that in greeting each other. As we hang around, and what do? We talk. The next thing you know, a couple people are standing over here talking, and somebody hears something. They come over and start talking, and 2 or 3 people. Next thing you know, you've got 5 or 6 people, and you're having this conversation that draws you together. That's worship. That's sharing your life and your life in Christ, because we're in the church. Now, what about online? Okay, we say we greet each other, right? A lot of times. Some of us do. You know, we say good morning, and that's great. It's really nice to go on there and know that somebody's there. And sometimes we actually respond to others. But you know, for the most part, and especially me, I'm just there. And when I think about it, I'll say hi to everybody. I'll go through and give a thumbs up. That's a nice conversation, isn't it? I'll give a thumbs up. As you know, when I was preparing this, I thought, why do I do that? Because you can't have a conversation with an emoji. It's a conversation. And we can't do that online. It's more difficult. It's not the same, but interacting with each other, that's what we do. Before church, after church. I don't know if you watch me up here long enough, you notice I interact during church. I used to get in trouble for talking, you know, in school, believe it or not. But that's, you know, we're interacting, we're talking, we're having conversations, we're making comments, you know, whatever. But that's because we're gathered together. It's hard online. That's something that we're challenged. All churches are challenged because I go on, you know, I admit I'm a troll. I go trolling other churches. I want to see what they're doing. I don't say anything, but I want to see what they're doing on Facebook. And too many of us are that way. We don't say we're here. But the thing that is really challenging, and this is kind of going into the encouraging part, and it's much harder to do online, but there's been times here when somebody comes that you don't know. But when you look around and nobody knows them, that's happened here, you get to talk to them. You know that they're there. We have had people that needed help, and they came here. It's been a number of times when in the conversation, just talking and people getting to know, somebody comes over and gets me and says, you know, they need prayer. We'll go around. I wish it was me, but you know, I'm me and I'm preoccupied on Sunday morning. But then we'll go out there in the hallway and a group of us will gather around and pray. And if we don't pray, we have those conversations, don't we? When you know somebody's hurting, when you know something's happened, we talk to them and find out what's happening. That's what we do. The problem is when it's online, you don't even know. And sometimes they may come online and see us, but who's going to post on a public Facebook page that I'm hurting and I need help? You can't even look at them and see their response, can you? And so that's the challenge for us. To make worship online more than watching worship and actually engaging fully in worship. We have to find ways to do that. And maybe it is by posting and responding to other people's posts on there. You know, you say good morning and somebody posts on yours and greets you personally and you greet other people personally and you ask them how they're doing and maybe send them a personal message. You know? But that's the thing about being in person is when somebody comes that doesn't come here, for whatever reason, we can see them, we know they're here, we can talk. One of the challenges of online worship is that we can't do that. But sometimes if we engage each other, then other people will feel safe to join in. And this is another place when we're online. If we're doing this, if we're having this conversation and somebody joins in, somebody that you've never seen the name, and I know we've had that on our Facebook page, you know, that we had somebody in Louisiana was on our Facebook page, just said, good morning. Somebody, you know, in Africa, actually I had an African, now I know he was a clergy person, but he was on our Facebook page and greeted us. See, we can greet them because we don't know who they are, we don't know what's going on, but they came to meet with us. So maybe in those ways we can get to know those who just drop in. Because, you know, they probably dropped in on several of them. And maybe they're just looking for the one that's going to reach out to them. And the one other thing that I think about making it purposeful is, now I have to admit, if I'm not the pastor, I have trouble with this in-person church, but being focused on service. Okay? Now since we've had Facebook, you'll see me on Facebook every once in a while up there, but it's because I'm looking to make sure we're online. But I'm the one, I don't care if I'm in an in-person meeting, an in-person class, or online, I'm always doing something else. Anybody do that? You know, I'm on a Zoom meeting, but I'm really on Facebook Marketplace because I need a little utility trailer. So I'm shopping, okay? Or I'm on Amazon, well, Amazon too. I learned you don't have to buy a book just because the professor recommended it, because you can do it on Amazon. But I'm doing these things. And I hate to say it, I'm playing games. Because that's what I do when I'm online, that's what I do. And see, then we're not engaged. Next thing you know, 5 minutes has passed and 2 or 3 people came on and gone off and we never even noticed it. So being purposeful and not being distracted. Being here, being present here, so we recognize and notice people that being present online. Because I learned through school that doing it online is a lot of work if you want to get anything out of it, and you get out of it what you put into it. And we have to put a lot into it. Okay? The first thing I thought is today, it takes people. Now we're fortunate we have Emily back there. But it takes resources. And so we've got the computers. You know how many people it takes to run sound and PowerPoint and live stream on the camera? That's 4. We've got 1. It takes people. It takes commitment. Here, it's difficult here. It takes work. So getting it ready, it takes work. Making sure things are running and hoping they stay running. It takes work. And it takes commitment. But engaging in worship online takes that kind of work and that kind of commitment as well. Because we have a choice. I used to like to watch those wood-turning videos, and I'm watching a video. I don't want to just watch worship. I want to be engaged. And being engaged always takes work. It always takes focus. But I do think about those people who cannot be here because they're working. Because then they can be with us later. And then the question is, and it's both about in-person worship and online worship, what are we doing to make that worship service meaningful for those who aren't here regularly? Or are we here just to watch worship? So I pray each one of us, as we think about worship and as we think about what we do at church, whether it's here in the building or whether we gather together online, think about how we can impact other people. And I pray that we can always improve our worship service so that we can be there for those people when they need us the most. Amen?